Welcome everybody to the Masad Method. We have an illustrious guest with us today, Andrea McGrory. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Marianne?
Very, very well. So happy to have you here with us today. So
And
today,
thank you for having me. I'm a podcast newbie, so I'm really looking forward to this.
oh, great, great. Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today. So what we want to talk about today is I don't speak data. And that's something that executives often tell us, especially in lines of business in large organizations like banks and government and utilities. And what I'm hoping today for us to accomplish is to have you explain in very practical terms to us um, what the value of data is and how an organization can set itself up for success. But before we do that and jump into that, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Great, thank you. Well, I guess I can say I'm an ancient data scientist. I studied actuarial science. That's using data to understand how events and trends impact mortality. However, when I left university, I went into technology, but I always saw the world through a data lens. And now I've come full circle, um, which began by a client about 10 years ago, asking me after I just completed their business strategy if I would work on their data strategy. And that got me back into my happy place with data. And, just seeing the two dovetail and the results that it had really led me to believe that it's data needs to be with the business and drive that business vision that's enabled by the data. So that was an exciting start. And the last 10 years have been even more exciting because, data has really become center stage, and the acceleration of data capabilities is so fast, and just what organizations have to do to ensure that their data capabilities keep in line with their business strategy. So busier than ever right now.
You know what? It's really interesting to hear people's stories and where they start and where they end up. But one of the things I was struck by when I first met you is really um, how passionate you are about data and how you've really made it a practical thing. So for so many businesses, and I mean it's typically an IT thing, but as you were just saying, the business really needs to drive the the whole data bus, if you will.
Absolutely. If their underpinning data foundations are not there, they're not going to be able to support their business directions. I was with a client the other day, and I was just about to kick off the discussion when they actually said that I
Yeah.
don't speak data, and I was really struck by the comment. And I have to say, this person was very savvy and went on to ask some of the most very on point, sophisticated data questions I probably have had in a long time. So I thought, why they ask about don't speak data? And I think, in reflection, there is just so much going on in the data industry right now, and so many, just a plethora of terms: data fabric, data mesh, semantic model, conceptual model, you know, lake house, warehouse, data catalogs, data marketplaces. And just as for fun, the last couple of days in prep for this, I asked some of the folks I work with that are really deep in data. I mean, they spent their lifetime in data, and I started asking, what is the difference between a semantic model and a conceptual model? And even they were like, had to step back and think about it. So if you're not breathing data every day, I think all of these terms have been confusing, and even like what we kind of position with the business clients as well as the technology clients. There's some conflicting approaches: put your data all in one place, or leave it where it is and use tools to bring it together. So I totally get you know, why they're at the asked to don't speak data, and put it into business terms and really align it with their business strategy, because then it makes sense for them.
Well, you know what? You're bringing up an excellent point, and this sort of is a good segue for me. So, how is aligning your business strategy with a robust data architecture not just, beneficial, wonderful, great, but also like a necessity, a core necessity, an imperative for a business?
So you have to look at the various facets of your business, the different capabilities in your business. So obviously, decision-making excellence is really important. If you're a financial institution, being able to assess your risks, if you're making strategic business decisions about where you're going to make investments, that decision-making excellence is really driven by your data. Also, operational efficiency. The more data you have, probably the more effective and efficient you can have in streamlining your operations and in automating processes. And then, elevating customer experience. I think we've been doing a lot of that over the years, but now in customer data, accurate customer data is very key. But if you have a strong data architecture, you can even delve deeper into customer insights, and then you can react quicker, whether it's protecting your customer or just improving the interaction and the satisfaction. We all get frustrated when the company knows where things are at, but you're having to explain them and move that forward. Innovation and growth. Obviously, having strong data foundations is going to allow you to start to participate in some of the cool, innovative things like Chat GPT, data science, adopting generative AI. You've got to have a strong data foundation to be able to participate in that. And then I think the other one is just strategic planning and forecasting, to be able to see the future and understand the impacts. All of that is data driven and essential to your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of my pet peeves is when I call a banking call center, and it's usually something to do with either my debit card or my credit card. And when you call in, they ask you to enter your credit card or your debit card number, and you do that. And then when the person gets on the phone with you, they ask you to give it to them again. Well, to me, that's a great example of where the bank hasn't really analyzed its data needs or data requirements properly, because once you grab that data, why do you need to ask for it numerous times?
Yeah, I mean, there could be KYC reasons, but there's so many things that we could do to help facilitate a better experience around that as well, too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or to actually, before you even call in, to know that there's an issue with your debit and credit card once you've validated who you are, that you don't actually have to explain, they can actually fix it. Or the idea was you didn't even have to call in. They saw the problem because of the data issues, and prevented it and fixed it, without any intervention.
Yeah.
That's where you really want to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think call centers are an area where I think across the board, I mean, a lot of organizations have tried to improve their call center services, but by and large, the data available to the people answering questions is either very limited, or they're not able to action it in a way to actually help the customer. Which sort of brings me to my next question. And really that is to explain to us what data architecture is, because we hear it a lot, we talk about it a lot, but what does it mean practically to a business person, for example?
That's a great question, because I think when we think data architecture, we tend to think of technology architecture and our data infrastructure. But really what data architecture is it's to guide and direct how we use our data. So it's the rules, the policies, the data standards, And really important, it's a data model. And this is where I see a lot of gaps in organizations, because if you don't have a data model, you're going to bring in lots of technology and it has its own data model, or people are going to build data products, reports, and dashboards using, whatever their own little data schemas. And
Yeah.
then you try and fit all that stuff together. And bingo, it doesn't fit together because it was never designed to fit together. So then you have to do a lot of work to be able to map it to something common so that you can associate it and use it and do all those wonderful things we just talked about in terms of data intelligence. So you need to really start. I think the first thing when I sit down with a client is like, do they have a good sense of their data landscape? There's some more data speak I'm using, but
Yeah.
it's really just think about all the data in your organization. Do you know where it is? Do you know how you're using it? Do you know what's important? And have you visualized it? Do you have some place where you can go and you cataloged it so you know where it is? And then, as I said, really important to be able to move up the maturity model and make sure you have a common data model that it all maps to.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something that happened recently in the news, and it concerned a government entity where I guess in the data architecture and data model, they hadn't thought through the privacy elements of the data that they were making available on a customer care type of system. And as a result, government employees were addressing, like, it was related to anything related to like driver's license and any kind of like stickers and things like that. Well, they were taking private data of customers and giving that data to car thieves, giving basically the car thieves all the information about the car and the address of where they could find that car. And for me, that's a really great example of where you have to think through all of the different ways that data could be used in a deleterious way, and think about the privacy implications and the security implications beyond just the data model itself. So talk to me just a little bit about that and your experiences around security and privacy and the importance of a very well thought out data architecture.
So that's why the rules and policies are very important. And, obviously there's privacy legislation in different countries that you need to be aware of. And even just, how you use that data to make sure that it aligns with the metrics within the organization, whether it's risk or it's confidentiality of that company's organization. So your data architecture, those policies and rules, you need to make sure that everyone in your organization has a good understanding of it. But it's the ones that are actually designing your interfaces and infrastructure. There should be controls around that, like a privacy impact assessment or data impact assessment, to make sure you get the consistency and the governance around that. So your data architecture, you need to make sure there's a governance layer, just like anything else that goes around that, to make sure that you're being compliant to what the rules and policies set out in the data architecture.
Yeah. But sort of to build upon that, I mean, you've already sort of covered off some of these things I'm going to ask you, but how does an organization really know that their data architecture is or is not fit to support the business strategy? How do they figure that out quickly so they don't get into these messes we've talked about?
One of the very quick litmus tests is especially when you're building business intelligence, are people doing a lot of manual data aggregation? So that tells you that you don't have a robust one. You could have lots of data. I think, one says, are you swimming or sinking in your data? Are you able to actually use all the data that you have? or you're just becoming more overwhelmed with that data? Do you have data quality issues? Are you having to do a lot of reconciliation? Are you seeing, errors in a lot of your processes? Do you know where your data is? Are you having challenges locating it to actually do the analytics? Another big one is it's part of technology debt, but do you have a lot of data debt where
Hmm.
some of it is because you don't have a data model, but even if you have a model, it's not being used effectively, and people have put the kind of wrong data in the wrong container, if you want, and so that you've got a lot of work to get to be able to move that forward. We see that a lot in older legacy systems as well too, is where, I only had so many certain fields, so I'm going to use this field for two things, and then, or I didn't use the field and I got null values. So those are key. When you don't have strong data governance over your data architecture, and you see like the privacy issues that you just talked about, or you don't have strong protection of your data, then you start to see other issues as well too. But it starts with the foundation of a strong data architecture and putting protection and governance around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for explaining it like that, because I think for a lot of people, I mean, people in IT probably get this. Some do, some don't. But in business, I feel like when I talk to a C-level executive, that they get really frustrated by all of the jargon and the IT speak. And at the end of the day, they want to run their business profitably and be able to hopefully turn on a dime.
Exactly.
Some industries can't. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because, if you have, bring all your data together and it's just being managed from a technology lens, you don't have that business lens on the data domain that part of the business owns and manages.
Yeah.
And so things can go sideways, or it's the data isn't being set up effectively for that area of the business. That's why I'm a big proponent is that, you really do need to have a strong data strategy that supports your business directions,
Right.
maybe even at a departmental level as well as holistic, and that the data is owned and managed by the business. The technology of the data, the technology enablement of the data can be obviously driven by technology,
Yeah.
but the business should really own, manage, and drive the data.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. So if there were like 2 or 3 key gems you would leave with an executive when you're talking to them about upping their game and getting maximum value out of their data investments, what would those 2 or 3 gems be?
So that's what we really do when we go through the data strategy, is to try and find out, where there's a gap in the data foundation. But that and also find out, in terms of a data use strategy, what could really propel their business. So if you're in like a risk business, then you really want to propel the risk intelligence. So you really do need to understand the business.
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And so if it's like risk intelligence, obviously, there's a lot going on in the risk world, geopolitically, economically, environmentally, and to really understand those risks today, you need a holistic view of the risk. That means you need a holistic view of the data. So the data has to be associated, and speed is the other thing. We
Yeah.
need to respond and mitigate risks a lot faster because the landscape is changing. So
Yeah.
that means that I need to, in the data foundation work, be able to bring the data, external and internal data, and be able to associate it much faster and much easier than I've ever done before. And that's, you know, if I'm relying on humans to aggregate that data, I'm not going to be able to keep pace. So it's really finding that, you know, giving them that visual picture, understanding where their business is going, help them understand what their challenges are. And they're going to give you the nuggets that, hey, I need to up my game in risk intelligence. How am I going to do that? Or I want to up my game in terms of understanding my client. Or maybe I want to innovate and create, you know, new data enabled products. And then we need to figure out what the roadmap is for that. But it really cues off the business and the business direction.
Yeah,
It doesn't stand on its own.
absolutely. Andrea, we're coming to the end of our time together, and I was wondering what sort of lasting words of wisdom you could leave with us.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Marianne. I think maybe we can end where we started about not speaking data. And I think it's probably really important that we understand the client and the client speak from their business perspective, and that we align the data to that business perspective. I think that's really key, and that's really what we're all about. That's where we have the fun, building the data strategies with our clients.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us time today and talking about this really, really important subject. And for all of those who are interested in furthering this discussion and discussing your specific business strategy and how it pairs with data, you can find us at www.gnosis.com. And the other thing is, please subscribe to this channel, because it's the only way we can proliferate all this knowledge and share it in a meaningful way. And just thank you again, Andrea, for your time today. It's been
lovely.
Pleasure and honor to spend time with you.
Likewise. Have a good one.
Thanks, love. Bye.